Hey you, I'm the Queen of Shade. Welcome to the interview. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit my Cash App to support your favorite content creator. Now let's get to the interview. Mwah.
Let me tell you something. You're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. Said you're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. You're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. Said you're a bougie bitch and your mama is too.
Salutations to folks. This is your fabulous leader, the Queen of Shade, coming to you with a very special presentation. I want to talk to you about something that occurred in my life. And I'm sharing this very real, very personal experience because I truly believe that with me sharing it, it will help me to heal from having to experience it. But it will also help you if you may be battling mental illness in your life or in someone's life that you love or family member. Mental illness is not easy to handle. Mental illness is not easy to get under control. Every single day of the life of that person or you that has mental illness needs to be spent keeping it in a healthy or at a healthy level. And it's not always easy. The changes in season affect us. We have triggers and traumas, but it can be done. I have lived with mental illness since I was 19 years old. That's when it first was diagnosed, but I'm sure I exhibited signs as a child. But I am now 39, and this year I will be 40. If I could do it, if I could get it under control, if I could bounce back to become this illustrious Queen of Shade, you can bounce back and you can get your mental illness under control and have a wonderful life. Do you hear me? Not a life that you just survive. Not a life that you just kind of stay in a pocket. No, an amazing, wonderful, magical, beautiful life. The title of this conversation is called The Longest 24 Hours That I've Ever Had in My Life. But the last 24 hours are not just the pinnacle of the story. The story actually started a year ago, and even sooner than that, but I'm going to pick up with a year ago. About a year ago, my brother came to live with me and my grandmother and my nephews. He was in the Army and his father died. We do not have the same father. We're half brothers, but we were raised with each other. So he's my brother. It's not any of that half brother situation. He's my brother in my heart. He was in the Army when he got the news that his father had died. And it broke him. When his father died, a portion of him died as well. And he had a very, very severe breakdown, one to which he did not seek help or get counseling or take medication for. My brother is schizophrenic. Even in the midst of his breakdown, he was put out of the Army. It wasn't an honorable discharge. It wasn't a dishonorable discharge. He exhibited behaviors that just fast-tracked them to put him out. Now, there's a reason why they were able to do that. He had passed boot camp and he was in AIT. And then he got the news. And for lack of a better word, lack of diplomacy, he lost his shit, being schizophrenic. They noticed. He scared everyone there. People didn't want to be around him. He was fast-tracked out, dropped back in Philadelphia, with nowhere to go but the clothes on his back and a duffel bag. Me being his older brother, I tried to come to his rescue. I tried to be there for him. Now, him being schizophrenic did not always make him the easiest person to get along with. But I remember him from back in 2006 and 2007. He was still schizophrenic, but it was more managed. It was more balanced back then. I was the one that was out of control. I was the one that wasn't taking my medicine. I was the one that caused us to lose our place of residence because I could not hold my end of the bargain up because I was sick. And he was my rock through that time. My brother is 4 years younger than me. He will be 36 in June. I will be 40 in September. So I tried to return the favor, remembering that I wanted to be there for him this time, the way he was there for me so many years ago. So, against my family's advice and my grandmother's fear, I asked my grandmother if he could come stay here with us. She was apprehensive, but she heard my pleas and my desires to help him. I couldn't put him in his own place, couldn't put him in his own condo, couldn't do that for him at this time. My money was tied up in my businesses, where it is still tied up to this day. The Queen of Shade is expensive. Cash at me at the Queen of Shade if you want to help. So he came here. And when he came here, I got to see a firsthand look at what his schizophrenia looked like in his life. He slept on my floor when he came here every night. I gave him a pallet. I slept in my bed. He slept on my floor. And I watched him cry. I watched him go through the throes of schizophrenia. I watched him talk to himself and about 5 other voices in his head. And then to sleep at night, I watched him down bottles and bottles and bottles and bottles and bottles of whiskey. I didn't agree with that, but it was kind of me saying to myself, you got to take the bad with the good when you're trying to help someone until you can get them to a position where you can do more. So I was kind of applying a tourniquet. So I would watch him as he would drink himself to death. He is an alcoholic. He had been an alcoholic for years, even when he came to my rescue back in 2007. He had been an alcoholic. I had seen it, but I had never seen it the way that I had seen it when he came here a year ago. He would pass out on my floor, and we would argue because I would say to him, bro, you got to live better than this. You're going to kill yourself too. You can't climb in the grave with him. I know he's gone and I know you're grieving, but you have to be there for yourself. You've got to get yourself together. You've got to get your life back on track. You've got to seek counsel, therapy, and treatment, not just for this depression, but for your mental illness, your schizophrenia. We would have those arguments regularly. Then, without asking, he moved into my grandmother's second room, adjacent to mine. And my grandmother has a lot of things. We don't want to use the word hoarder, but she has a lot of things because in her life, a lot of people have done her wrong, and she put her trust in the things she could see and feel. So she has a lot of things. It's not always been difficult. It's not always been easy. At times it has been difficult to even live with her. But I can only help one person at a time psychologically. So it was my brother's time. He moved into our second room, cleaned it up, organized it, got a bed, TV. I gave him my television because I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV in 6 years. being the Queen of Shade exclusively on Instagram. I was working, I was channeling, I was driven. And things got a little better because he wasn't in my way. I could work. Even when he was sleeping on my floor, drunk, I would wake him up. He'd go out into the hallway. I'd make some kind of pallet out there for him. I'd close the door and I'd come to you guys and I'd deliver to you guys all of those Queen of Shade videos, 22,000 plus those videos about how you can change your life, how you can help yourself, how you've got to love yourself more than you love anyone else. And I was hoping that through the door, he would hear what I was saying and that some seed would take root. Well, he moved into my grandmother's room and the drinking stopped. And the drinking only stopped because of one reason. He ran out of money. So then he had to face himself for the last year, sober, without any money for alcohol. Because in the beginning, I would give him money, but I got sick and tired of him doing this cycle of buying the whiskey, passing out on my floor, arguing and saying how he wanted to kill everyone. Not himself, kill everyone. Everyone else was responsible for his downfalls, his calamities, his problems, everyone but himself. And I listened to that. The drinking stopped because he had no money and I wasn't giving any. But I spent my money many days for months feeding him because he needed to eat. He was rail thin. He needed to eat. He would get sick if he didn't eat. So I went without. I spent my money sometimes on him, buying nothing for myself, no food. And that continued for 6 months. My grandmother covered me with food because she knew I was using all of my extra money that I would spend on food for myself on him. And I watched him as we got into arguments, be ungrateful, tell me I didn't have to do it, get on his high horse, argue with the voices in his head, and then turn on me. My grandmother was afraid many nights in her own home because we would be up here screaming like cats and dogs. And I'd be telling him, dude, you got to get some help because this isn't right. This is wrong. You can't do this here. It's not acceptable. So the arguing stopped. He was able to go to the government and get some food assistance and some medical. So I could stop buying him food and focus on me again. And I did. And my brand began to soar again through all those hurts. I tell you, you never know what people are going through unless they tell you. And I'm speaking of myself. But I also want to say you never know what people are going through who are depressed, mentally ill, and all facets of the rainbow. There's a whole lot of people out here hurting. My brother and I didn't have the best childhood, but we are not children anymore. He's 36 and I'm 40. 15 years ago, I took responsibility for my childhood and myself and my life. And I got myself some help. I got therapy. I took medicine and I still take medicine to this day. And I still have therapy to this day, once a week, every week for 15 years. So I noticed with him being, my brother, being sober, he would become more and more violent, say things like he wanted to kill everyone in the house, make everything everybody else's fault. It was never him. It was always somebody else's fault. He began to get very, very volatile and very aggressive. First with my nephew. I was actually filming one night, talking to an interviewee as I was interviewing them. And I heard the argument break out. And I heard him jump in my nephew's face and try to goad him to come outside so that he could fight him. And it was horrible. And I actually had to cut that interview short. I uploaded it because it reminded me of what I heard. More and more violent he became. 24 hours ago, before I go there, it's traumatic, guys. It just happened. I'm sorry. He jumped in my grandmother's face one night. And my nephew and I were kind of coming to her rescue, but we got there late because she handled it herself. He jumped in her face and she pushed him down with all her might. He flew into the television. Nothing was broken. My nephew and I were there and we kind of got between them. And he went back upstairs into the room and I talked to my grandmother and I had this attitude. Why would you engage with him? He's schizophrenic. He needs help. And we were angry at my grandmother for pushing him down. But she said to me, I thought he was going to harm me. I'm afraid of him in my own house. He's got to go. So at that very night, we called him downstairs and said, dude, this was January, February, somewhere. By May the 31st, you need to be gone. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. You've been here a year. It's time for you to get back out there, get treatment, get help, all of those things. You need to do that because it's not working with you being here. So time went by and my grandmother endured being afraid in her house, having him come downstairs, slamming things in the kitchen, cooking at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning, playing with knives and talking about how he could kill everyone. Because remember, in his schizophrenia, he was still talking out loud to all of the personalities and voices in his head, saying things like I could kill them all. I could stab them all. I could hurt them all. They're nothing to me. My brother watched a lot of anime, dark anime, all his life. So he was saying things like he is the absolute. He is more than God. He could squash out and crush out our lives. He's very vengeful, very wrathful, and very angry. Fast forward to 24 hours ago. The divine spoke to me and said, you need to give him something in writing, stating the date that you want him gone, you and your grandmother want him gone. Because if you don't, he's established residency here in the state of Pennsylvania. It stands, he's established residency here for over a year. You have to give him at least 30 days before you evict him. So I got with my grandmother and I told her, and she said, yes, I'm aware. We need to write something. So of course, I'm a businessman. I drafted a letter with the feelings of my grandmother in mind, not saying anything about how he had been acting, not saying anything about the outburst or her being afraid. It simply said, bro, this is your written notice being served to you that on May the 31st, we need you gone. I came upstairs and I walked into the room. He was masturbating. So I quickly turned my head and just put the paper on the coffee table in front of the television. About 6 minutes later, I hear my brother start screaming and cursing. You guys are gonna do this to me, what the fuck? He comes out of his room to me. He didn't get in my face at this time. But he said to me, I'm not going no fucking where. He had been saying that to my grandmother for a while since the incident with her. I'm not going no fucking where. I'm staying right here. I'm not leaving. My grandmother was very afraid of him, but I told her I could deal with him. Let me deal with him. Let me give him time. I tried to love the hurt away, and I wasn't doing it by myself. I would like to thank my psychiatrist and my therapist for helping me to be a tower of strength, dealing with my brother for the last year. They helped me express my feelings, talk about what game plans we could have. My brother, he refused therapy. He refused medicine. He refused treatment. So he wanted to live here and be that chaotic in his mind and brain. And we were supposed to just endure it. Not in my grandmother's home. Not when she was afraid of him, because he would say things like I could kill everyone in the house. So fast forward to back to him and coming out to me, you guys are going to fucking put me out. And we're like, Raymond, you've had a year. That's my brother's name. Raymond, you've had a year. You've had a year. It's time for you to get some help, get on with your life. But whatever you do, you have to vacate the premises May the 31st. That's your written notice. This is what I was saying to him. This is your written notice. It is what it is. He was irate. He was out of bounds and combative. My grandmother slept downstairs. My nephew had moved out. So it was just her and I and my brother. She was afraid. So I said to him, this is your legal notice, Raymond. You have to leave. I'm not going no fucking where. You guys can't make me. I could kill everybody in this house. You're going to do what I say do. I said to him, Raymond, you could leave May the 31st, or you could leave today when I call the police. So he's irate. He hadn't jumped in my face yet. He was irate. Call the fucking cops. I did. The police came out. And one thing I noticed about him is when they came, he put on his best behavior. He didn't show them the wrath and the vengeful side. He didn't show them that he was a man in crisis. But my neighbors knew. One of my neighbors here next to me said he would always have the window in my grandmother's room open, curtains open, windows, blinds drawn up, walking back and forth, pacing, talking about, I could kill everybody in this house. They're going to do what I say do. And she said, you guys got to get him out of there. You got to intervene. Something happens. Something's going to happen if you don't. And I said, all right, I'm trying. I'll think of something. The police spoke to him. And because he had residency here and he was exhibiting signs that he could have a very intellectual conversation with them, he was in crisis. But what the police officer told me was, if you want him gone, you have to go down to family court. You have to get a restraining order and an eviction notice, an eviction order in the same breath. And that when you get it, you come back to us and we will serve it and take him out of your home. So the entire afternoon, he was irate. He was angry in the room. We listened to him pace back and forth, slamming and breaking things in my grandmother's room. Then it became very violent. I laid down to go to bed, and it was already 2 something in the morning. My neighbors were hearing all of it, and they're like, okay, what's going on? Next thing I know, I'm hearing him say, that fucking bitch, that fucking faggot. I could kill them both. My grandmother was downstairs crying. She said, I can't take any more, BJ. I can't take any more. So me assuming that I knew this young man, that he would respect the brotherly bond, knocked on the door. And he opened the door, and I said, Raymond, you've got to calm down. You're scaring our grandmother, and this is why she wants you gone. I'm not going no fucking where, is what he said. His retort. I said, Raymond, you are. I said, tomorrow I'm going to family court, and I'm going to get a restraining order and an eviction order, and the police are going to serve it to you. And instead of leaving May the 31st, giving you time to get a job, because he was always a hard worker, always a good worker, always a proficient worker. That was kind of like his, like for me, my thing keeps me grounded and rounded and moving forward is that we work. It's kind of the thing I feel best doing. He was always a prolific worker, had many jobs. As an alcoholic, he ran a beer distributor. Don't know how he did it, but he did it. So I told him these things, and he tried to slam the door in my face, but my foot was right there, so it didn't slam. I looked at him and I said, Raymond, this is happening. So then he said, that fucking bitch downstairs, and that you're a fucking faggot doing her bidding. I didn't care about the words. I only saw someone that I knew 17, 18 years ago and had grown up with my whole life. Someone who had helped me. Someone that was there for me when I was down. I was trying to return the favor, but he had been here a year. I returned the favor. I just didn't realize it. He opens the door and he stepped into my space. I said, Raymond, get out of my face. He didn't move. I pushed him back, but not hard, because I just wanted him out of my space. I was going to turn and walk away. He attacked me. This is traumatic for me. It's trauma, because it happened just 24 hours ago. Here I am, an illustrious queen, forced to beat my brother's ass in the hallway, in the bathroom of my grandmother's house. I don't know what it was at that moment, but I think I was afraid and fed up with being afraid. And I knew that if I lost that fight, he would go after my grandmother. And I couldn't have that. My grandmother and I have not always seen eye to eye. I'm shaking. My grandmother and I have not always seen eye to eye, but that's my grandmother. And she has done more for me than anyone in my life. I would not allow anyone to hurt her, especially in her own home when she is helping someone try to get better. She gave him a year, guys, as did I. So we started fighting. I started punching him. I punched him in his face. I'm pulling him all back. I'm throwing him in the bathroom tub. I'm tearing up the upstairs bathroom. And we're both thin, but I'm about 50 pounds heavier than he is. Not 50, about 25, not really, about 25. I'm not that heavy. But I knew I couldn't lose the fight. because my grandmother was downstairs and he would go after her. I don't know what it is with certain people, some people with mental illness. They want to be the dominant personality in the space. They want everybody else to do what they say do. They want everybody else to submit to them. And he would say things like, I am the absolute. He would always say that from his anime, and he would talk in very demonic voices. And it was a lot. It was a lot. So I'm your queen. I whooped his ass. And I thought it would be over. And I had about a minute to catch my breath. And he lunged at me again. And I had to whoop his ass all over again. But this time, he managed to get my thumb into his mouth. And he bit down on my thumb, cutting through the flesh. Now, I went to the hospital. He didn't break any nerves or anything like that. And the cuts weren't as deep as I thought they were. They hurt really, really badly. But he had hit my thumb in his mouth, and he grabbed my other hand with his leg and put his hands around my throat and proceeded to try to strangle me. I don't know about you, but I have this uncanny ability that in the midst of turmoil and chaos, where most people would panic because their air supply is being cut off, I relaxed completely. And in that ability, because of that ability, and in that moment, I was able to muster and gather all of my strength because I wasn't panicking. And I stood up with his body wrapped around my midsection, him grabbing one arm, my thumb in his mouth, bleeding. I was able to stand up in the bathroom in a very small space, but I fight very good in close spaces. And as I stood up, the weight of gravity helped me to get free from his grasp around my neck and him to relinquish my thumb. And I stood over top of him. And I'll never forget saying to him, I wasn't angry. I wasn't fighting him from a place of wrath. I was fighting him from a place of defense. And I was tired. I was fed up. I was ready myself for him to go. But I looked down at him and the animalistic looks in his face and the growling and all of those things because he's schizophrenic. And I said to him, Raymond, what did you expect to happen if you attacked me? What did you expect to happen? And I said to him, I'm still going. You will be served and you will vacate this premises. I walked away and I called the police because they had been here earlier. I told them what happened. I was out of breath. I was fighting for my life. And not just mine, but the life of my grandmother, because he was determined to kill everybody in the house. And it was only her and I. But she had called my nephew, crying and saying, your uncle is upstairs fighting his brother. Please come. He was around the corner. My nephew got there 5 minutes after the fight stopped. And I was glad because I didn't want a fight to turn into a murder, because my nephew was also tired of my brother. He had lived here with him the whole year. He had only moved out the beginning of March. He had my brother jump in his face, threaten to kill him, and all of these things. He was tired too. And I did not want to get my nephew involved. So as I called the police the second time, they said they would come. But they said that if they came, they would be arresting my brother and taking him to prison, jail, prison. I said, no, never mind. Don't come. Because I was still thinking of my brother. My brother may be schizophrenic. He may be an animal at times. He has threatened my life and the life of everyone in my home. But my brother has never really been in trouble with the law. And I know the things that happen to a young, thin man, especially mentally ill, in prison. I would not ruin his life and the rest of that fragmented personality that he had. So I said, I need other options. They said, well, listen, you've got to go to the hospital right now. It's late, it's 12 midnight. You've got to go to the hospital right now. You've got to get the report. You've got to be seen because this is going to help you with your restraining order. Go now. So I hung up the phone. My brother retreated upstairs in the room because he didn't want to fight my nephew. Because when my nephew came in, my nephew was furious and went for him. And my brother ran from my nephew and locked the door. And I said, listen, the cops say I got to go to the hospital right now. So I went to the hospital. They saw me. It took forever. They saw me. No nerve damage. No real damage. It hurt like hell, but they gave me a tetanus shot, which you can see through my sheer arm. They gave me a tetanus shot. I still have on the hospital band because I've been taking photos because I have another hearing to make the restraining order permanent. And it will cover everyone in my house, my grandmother and I and my nephew. But after this video, I will cut this off. My fingers don't really hurt anymore because I was given antibiotics and the tetanus shot. So the swelling has gone down. It's mainly just some superficial, just some superficial wounds. Still hurts a little. But I got that. Then I went to the police station after the hospital to get the police report number, the DC number is what they called it, of the report that they had written the first time they came out to my house that day. I needed that for the restraining order to take effect. No sleep. I turned around, went from the police station. My grandmother drove me to the train and my nephew. My nephew loves me. My nephew, Evan, he loves me. He is like a child I never had. He's my sister's child, but me and him, we are so closely knit and bonded. He really is my best friend. He rode the whole time. Now, mind you, called out of work because I don't go anywhere by myself. Why? Because I'm the queen of shade. And not everybody is happy about that fact. So he went because I was already in a compromised state. I have bruises and I'm sore from fighting like a dog in the street with my brother at 40 years old. I'm so upset about that, but I had to do what I had to do. So we got on the train. We were the first there. They opened at 8. I think I was before the judge. 5 minutes. Asian judge. She took a look at the scars on my neck, which are there, but I used makeup to cover them today so I could work. I have an interview today with someone I can't wait to talk to after this. And she granted it immediately, gave me a court date to make it final, and said, go, and don't forget to come back on your court date. I said, I'll be here. So I will forever have a restraining order against my brother, my baby brother. So we came home. I hadn't slept. And the cops were busy. There were a lot of things happening in the world around me and on the streets. I called a couple of times so that they could serve it. We came back in the house. He was upstairs in the room, quiet. I didn't try to serve it myself because I did not want to have to fight him again. And then this time I brought my nephew was there. I didn't want to have to bring him into it because my nephew is bigger than both of us. He works out, he's muscular, he's stronger, he's stocky. You know, I'm 5'11", my brother's 6'2", my nephew's 5'6" or 5'7", but you know, short men carry muscle better. I didn't want to get my nephew involved because my nephew was itching to beat his ass. And I said, no, Evan, no. So I sent Evan home, go home. He said, call me when the cops get here because I don't want him acting crazy around my grandmother. I said, okay. The cops finally came. And he didn't know that they were here. They kind of came silently, sirens off, pulled into an adjacent parking spot down away from the window where he could see them. It was one cop at that time, a female. I walked over to her. I said, are you here for K3? And she said, yes. I said, you might want to call for backup. And I explained to her how I had fought him and how he was violent and threatening to kill everybody in the house. And that her, even as a woman, she was short. I said, you're going to call for backup, call for backup. She did. And a Latin officer, Latino, he came, he was a little older. I said, call for more backup. So they did. And they said, you know, sometimes when they see more cops, they don't choose the road of violence. They kind of keep it cool and comply. By the end of the backup calls, there were 4 cops here. One beautiful woman, one Latino, one Caucasian, and one African-American cop. And what I loved was that they were there to protect me. I had a very serious conversation with them outside. And we were outside and we even laughed and I shared what I do. And they were like, wow, you're so talented. And I'm sorry you have to deal with this, you know, because I was feeling bad. I tried to help. And they said to me, the cops, not every cop is bad. Remember this. I had a Caucasian, 2 Caucasians, because the woman was Caucasian, 2 Caucasians, a Latino and an African-American. They weren't mean to me. They weren't bad. Wasn't no brutality, wasn't no hatred, and wasn't no racism. They were there to serve me. I've always had positive relationships with law enforcement because I'm not one that is prone to breaking the law. So they said to me, you know, you got your life ahead of you. You got to do what you got to do. You got to continue to do what you got to do. You can't have this in your house. We're going to take care of this today. So they came in. I put my cat up and there was a lot of stuff in the house. I'm working on it. One person at a time, guys, one person at a time. My grandmother's now next. Her and I are here together. One person now left. So my brother was out. I got to work on my grandmother and her collecting of things. I won't say hoarder, but hoarder. I got to work on that now, but I can't do it all. So they go 4 cops strong up to the door, knock on the door. Raymond, he opens the door. He's very peaceable, very civil. He says, you know, my brother got the best of me. My nephew wanted a piece of me. I heard him tell him that. And they're like, well, that's unfortunate. We hear that you are not taking medicine. You're schizophrenic. He confirmed that. And then they said, well, listen, you got to come with us. You got to leave. You got to vacate this premises. They asked me, some of the cops, the female, when she was done talking to him, my grandmother asked, I took my grandmother before they went in the house. I took my grandmother and put her in her car and kept her safe. And she asked, please make sure we get the keys, because we had even given him keys to our house. He was crazy at times. And I use that term relatively. It's not, every person with mental illness is not crazy, but he was acting like a lunatic. So they get him outside and he's acting peaceably at the moment. And then when he got the last bag, the switch happened in front of all the cops. And they got to see how aggressive he was because he started calling us faggot, that bitch. I could have killed them, da, 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 da. So the cops They got to see what we were complaining about. And they looked at me and said, make sure you don't miss your court date to make this permanent. So the black cop looks at me when he starts getting like that. My grandmother's safe in her car with the doors locked, 15 feet away. The black cop looks at me and points and says, go in the house, shut the door, because he started to get violent again. So I went in the house and I shut the door. I looked out the window. My brother had nowhere to go. He had burned every bridge with everyone who had ever tried to help him. We were his last hope before rock bottom. He had nowhere to go. They didn't even know where to take him. They kept saying, let us take you to a hospital so you can be evaluated mentally, so you can get some medicine, so you can, they suggested a shelter. But they said to me, if he's acting and behaving this violently, the shelter's going to kick him out too. He needs to go to a hospital where he can get help, and it'll be a nicer facility, and stay there a while until he can get on his feet. He didn't want to go to the hospital. He had refused treatment again. More than my aches and pains, more than my thumb, which is starting to feel better, more than that, when I looked out the window, I knew that I was seeing my brother for the last time on this side of life, and that I would never lay eyes on him again in the flesh. I knew that it was over. And, pardon me, I also knew he wasn't the same person that I knew 18, 19 years ago. And I knew I'd never see him again in person. And I'd always had this fear, excuse me, my hairs. I'd always had this fear that I would go become some huge success, and that's happening. And I would be in Paris and London and Europe, and that I would come back. And I kept having this, I'm a shaman, so my visions come true. So I saw myself and my grandmother coming back to the Philadelphia Central City area for a Christmas morning and doing a little shopping. And I kept having this vision, even, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, even when he was here. I couldn't get past the vision because I just didn't want it to be true. But in the vision, I saw myself doing a little shopping. We have Burberry, we have all these high-end stores downtown. And I saw me coming out of a store, and there was a homeless man, and he had long woolly hair because they don't have anything to take care of themselves, and it grows, and he had his bag on his back. And I went to hand him some money. And in the vision, when I handed him his money and he looked up at me, I realized it was my brother. And my therapist taught me most schizophrenics end up on the streets because they burned every bridge and they won't seek treatment or help. No one can help them. I pray to God I never look in my brother's face on the street like that. But I have to go on with my life. And my body may be a little sore. My finger may be a little sore. But my feelings are the things that are hurt the most. Because for the last 15 years, I've gotten better. And I had to accept the fact that my brother had gotten worse. That I was holding on to a memory of a child, a young man who just got a bad deal all the way around. He was part of my life when we were children. We had a bad childhood. It was rough. But guess what? We're not children anymore. And we haven't been children for a long time. I'll be 40 in September. He'll be 36 in June. So that was my 24 hours. and my closing the book on my brother forever. Seems like I lose everybody in my family, except my grandmother. I am literally estranged from all of my siblings now, 2, 4, and 6 years apart, and I don't talk to a single one of them. Our lives went in different directions, and the trauma was so great, and I dealt with my trauma, and I could not invite them back into my life because they were coming in the way they always were. I was the only one that changed, got better, got healthier, made something of myself. But that's what it is. And there you have it. The last 24 hours have been the longest 24 hours I've ever had in my life. But I'll tell you something. My grandmother's not afraid anymore. I can see her sleep because she wasn't sleeping. I watch her sleep, and she's at peace now because he's gone. And you know what? So am I. I pray that he gets the help that he needs. But I watched him for a year, only take and take and take. And when he couldn't have more, he was violent and angry and demanded it, like a spoiled child. But we're not children anymore. So to my brother, because he watched what I did, I bid you adieu. And to the rest of you, I admonish you. There's only so much you can do for a person. Don't hold on to a memory, because you'll hold on to a memory and the person that you're remembering won't even be the same person. I'm not even the same person I was when I woke up this morning. The only thing constant in life is change. Do what you can. Do your best. And like a famous actress said, and leave the rest. My conscience is clear. It's my feelings that are hurt and wounded. So I ask all of you for your support as I get through this time. But I have to go because I have an amazing interview that I have to conduct, which is really a conversation right now. Please subscribe, comment, share, like, watch. And don't forget to support me by hitting my Cash App, the Queen of Shade at Cash App, because I have to continue. My star is rising, and I got to keep going up, no matter who gets left behind. I've worked all my life for this. I dealt with all the pain and the pressure and the insanity and the mental illness and the trauma. I earned my success, and I earned my right to live and breathe in the free world. And I'll let no one take that from me, not even a sibling who tended to be jealous at the fact that I was more successful and in a better way than he was. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the vocal stylings. Oh, that hurt. It's still a little sore. Of the Queen of Shade. Bye-bye. See you in the next interview.
So did you enjoy? I hope you did. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and don't forget to Cash App me at the Queen of Shade. I am your favorite content creator, right? Right. You want to see more of this content, right? Right. Cash App me. I love you. Mwah.
I've got my black stilettos on. Don't you make me take them off. I'm assuming first position. Gonna show you I'm a boss. I've been given 60 seconds just to put